Start the recording. All right, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us bright and early. For those of you who I haven't met yet, my name is Mel and I am the chapter president of the IABC Queensland chapter. Before we kick off today, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which we work, live and play, the Yagara and the Turrbal people here in Brisbane, also known as Meanjin. If you're joining us from other country, I'd love it if you could type in the chat where you're joining us from this morning. And I'd like to pay my utmost respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, and I extend that acknowledgement to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples who are here today or who are watching the recording later. So today's episode, today's webinar is all about professional networking. And I know for some of us, it's something that we find terrifying a lot of the time, or something that we're just not confident enough to do. So that's why we've got Cheryl here. Cheryl is the CEO of Women's Network Australia, and we are very, very lucky to have her here. Dilka heard you speak, I think, at an event a little while ago, Cheryl, and said, oh, we must get Cheryl here. We must get Cheryl here. So we've been very excited ever since. So without further ado, I will hand over to Cheryl to introduce herself and get things going.
Thanks, Mel, and thanks everyone for joining us first up this morning, and even those who are on public transport, which is fantastic. It's a delight to be speaking at an IABC Queensland event as a former committee member, and really great to reconnect, see some familiar names in our lineup this morning. So hello, one and all. So yes, for those who haven't personally met yet, my name is Cheryl Gray. As Mel said, CEO of Women's Network Australia. That's a national business network for women in business. So I guess my whole job these days is networking in some respect. But for those who do know me, I come from a journalism and PR background. I still have my PR agency as well, so I still very much in the comms space. And I guess one of the reasons that I moved into working with women in business was an acknowledgement that we often do find it a little bit challenging to network, and for some reason, from my observation from a lot of networking functions that, dare I say, are often organised by men, they don't really suit women in their networking style. One in particular stood out for me. It was an 11 o'clock start with a 4-hour drinks package and rocked on till 4 or 5 o'clock. And I observed that at about 2:30, about 25 women stood up and left the room, because we were all on school pickups. So the whole sort of long lunching, get together, have a 4-hour smoozer just doesn't work for a lot of working women. And even the length of functions and so forth. So I just sort of thought, as women, so I guess I'm speaking from a very a female perspective in this, but what I'm going to talk about in our session this morning is applicable to both men and women. But by way of explanation as to why I sort of wanted to focus on the area of business networking, and that experience was part of it, but also how important it is to our business. I've been around for a long time, and a lot of my clients, my close contacts and colleagues are people I know for a very long time. I wanted to share something about myself that you might not know. This is me as a 7-year-old cheerleader for the Winner Manly Seagulls. I was at the time really impressed by those Bobby Dazzler socks, which were part of the cheerleading uniform. And the reason I share that is because last night I actually attended my first board meeting as a member of the Winner Manly Seagulls board. So almost, dare I say, nearly 50 years after that photograph was taken, I'm back at the Winnamanly Seagulls, this time in a slightly different role, but still very much cheering from the sideline. And the reason I share that is because you just never know when people who were part of your life, even from a very early age, might actually become part of your life now in a professional or even personal capacity. So the way we interact with people, the relationships we form, and the way we treat people is really important, not just now, but moving into the future. You know, some of you may have shared some professional experiences that I have, which is sometimes when we deal with people in powerful positions, they can take on a certain air or demeanor that doesn't stand them in good stead later on. And, you know, no disrespect to media advisors, but sometimes the way I've experienced and seen media advisors interact with journalists is a really short-sighted methodology, because at some point they may not be a media advisor, they might be back out on the floor. So I've always been really conscious of that, and I think it's a really important lesson that we should all remember. Any one of us on this call could end up being our employer or employee, our boss, our supervisor, our manager at any time. So being really conscious of the way we treat people, I think, is a really important lesson. So what's all that got to do with networking? Part of what Mel alluded to is our level of discomfort with the concept of networking, and the word itself does tend to be associated with some rather negative connotations. But ultimately, if you break networking down as to what it really means, it's about establishing and nurturing relationships. Now, we all do that every day in our lives, with our family, with our work colleagues, with our friends. Just think of all the relationships and how important those things are in your life. And, you know, if I ask any one of you, you know, what do you enjoy doing? I bet pretty much all of you will say spending time with my family, because that's a relationship, and it shows you how central as human beings relationships are to us. So if we start to think about networking not as networking, a process that I need to go through in order to build professional contacts, but as about nurturing and establishing relationships, I think it can take away a bit of the ugliness or the bitterness that's often associated with networking. And please feel free to share questions. I don't have full visibility of the chat at the moment. Oh, yes, I do. I'll just move it down there. But yeah, if you've got questions along the way, feel free to ask them or pose them, and I'll try to address them, and we'll certainly have time at the end. I guess the thing about networking is why is it important? What do we do it for? And what's in it for me? And really, if you think about it from your professional perspective, there's a hell of a lot in it for you. It gets results. Networking gets results. Think of client referrals, think of job referrals that you may have received over the past. You know, we know as communicators how important word of mouth is. This is your personal word of mouth. This is your opportunity to be referred and be a referrer to others. So, you know, a lot of job offers come through networking. The old "it's who you know" is still very relevant today, because the outcome of successful networking is to be known, liked, and trusted. And we know from our marketing that those are the three ingredients to making decisions, particularly around purchasing, or in our case, it may be, you know, some sort of career advancement or appointment. Networking also allows you to identify and get mentors or allies, either in a formal or informal sense. It also is very useful in identifying talent, potential employees or collaborators, people you know you're just going to get on really well with and want to work with. And also just friendships. We don't have to go into every networking scenario with this sense of what's in it for me. In fact, we should turn that around and say, what can I bring to this interaction or this relationship? And often lifelong friendships are often what comes out of, some casual or formal networking opportunities. For those who might struggle with networking, formal networking at functions and so forth, it is a bit of one of those things that with practice you can become more confident at. The sense of putting yourself out there becomes easier the more you do it. But there's obviously some techniques which I'd love to share with you to take the edge off it. Networking is also a great way to open yourself up to new ideas, new concepts, new information, because it's really about asking questions, being curious, and curiosity is what brings people together through networking. So if we can try to sort of take away some of the fear of networking and focus on what we get out of it, both personally and more importantly, what we can bring to it for others, hopefully we start to demystify it and take away some of those things. So as I said, the best way to stop hating networking is to stop thinking of it as networking and more as connecting and building relationships. So adopting that curious learning attitude, what can I get out of a situation? And being observant to both human nature, to the conversations around you and so forth. All of those things are really, really valuable to you professionally and personally. Another great way to take the fear out of networking is to not go in alone. Don't go in alone, take a friend. It could be a work colleague, it could be, someone else who might share an interest with you. But always going in with a friend is a really great way to take the edge off it. In saying that, though, the aim is to then not spend the night with your friend. You want to go in with a friend, but also have a bit of a plan beforehand. And I just want to pick up on the comment in the chat box about neurodivergent people and the typical networking event from Elizabeth, and absolutely agree. I think event organisers are hopefully becoming, and perhaps your experience might be different, I'd love to hear more, around the particular needs of neurodiverse individuals and how we cater with them. Because yes, the traditional networking events can be loud. The thing I hate most, I don't know if you've ever been to a speed networking event. It's like putting 100 people in a washing machine on the spin cycle. It's loud, it's chaotic, and how anyone actually creates any genuine connections out of it, I honestly don't know. And for someone who may have issues with crowds and noise, it must just be, torture. So yes, we do have to think about the way all networking is done, but opportunities for those of us and ensuring that they're both diverse and inclusive opportunities. But yeah, phoning a friend, taking a friend with you is a great way for all of us to be able to deal with that. Before you go into any networking situation, and it could be a function, an event, or it could be just a meeting, but thinking about who else is in the room. Who do you know? Have you met them before? What are the types of questions you might ask, rather than, what you might say? I think the 1980s style network is, I have my elevator pitch and my business card, therefore I'm good to go, up past. That's not networking anymore. It's about thinking, what can I bring to this event? What questions can I ask to spark that curiosity in that conversation? And out of that, relationships are formed. And then we get to the point where we may have, the exchange of business cards or coffees or follow-ups and so forth. So I think things have changed a lot to be honest, in terms of the way networking is done. So if you're in a situation when you want to think about expanding your network, perhaps from a professional sense, you've got a great group of friends, you've got close family, you work, maybe you've worked in the same organisation for a while. Do you want to kind of break out and start to think about who else you should be or can be networking with? Well, obviously, professional organisations like IABC are a great place to start, because you're there with like-minded individuals, at least from the professional sense, people who work in a similar field to you, most likely. So professional organisations are a terrific way to start. I like and actively encourage people to think about 3 types of networking groups or organisations to be a part of. Head, heart, and hand essentially is the 3 areas where I think networking should be covered off. So your head, your professional organisation, to help you to learn and develop and grow and new skills, etc. So all of us should be in some form of professional organisation, no matter what our profession is. And we're not there just to tick off PD requirements, but actually use it as that ongoing learning and professional development that we do ourselves. The heart network are the ones that we love, whether it's knitting or running park runs or doing pottery or art classes, whatever that passion is that you have, there's a group out there that wants to share that passion with you. So that will bring a whole diverse cross-section of individuals together, but they share that common passion that you have. So finding that heart network is really important. And the hand network is one where you develop skills or contribute to the back pocket. Types of organisations where some people are in more structured professional network groups like BNI or client referral style groups. I personally don't like them. I don't want to be obliged to be working with people that I don't have that close trust relationship with. But for some people, that's their objective. They want to go in and get clients or get referrals. So that works for them. So think about your head, your heart, and your hand, and then think about your capacity. How much time, energy, and resources do you have to spread yourself across those networks? Because you don't want networking to be a chore. You don't want it to be something that you feel is taking time away from your other commitments and passions. Some people have a lot of capacity, so they're in a lot of groups, whether they're the combination of head, heart, and hand, or more head or more heart. Whichever works for you, where you feel that you are both able to gain those relationships, but also contribute. The other way to think about expanding your network is this concept of strong ties and weak ties. If you were to put yourself in the middle of a circle and identify, say, 5 or 6 people who you would define as close contacts, people that you know well, that you probably see regularly. And then you did an outer ring of people that you might see occasionally. For example, you might occasionally see them at an IABC function or some other group. You already have strong ties with that inner circle. If you want to expand your network, it's the weaker ties, the outer circle, where you should actually focus your energy, because often those weaker ties may have a weaker connection to you, but they're your conduit to another network. So by spending time with those ones that you may not have a strong relationship at present, you're likely to find that they are connected to one of those other head, heart, or hand groups that you might be interested in being part of. And they can actually be your connector to a whole new group of people. So if you want to expand your network, think about, where those strong and weak ties are, and where, in fact, you'll find your people. So as I mentioned, head, hand, and heart, the places where we can find new people, but also thinking about our existing contacts. one of the things we tend to do, and I'll go back to my 7-year-old cheerleading example, think about people you've lost contact with, old acquaintances, contacts who are still lingering in your contact book, if you've still got one, but it's probably electronic. Your LinkedIn contacts who are there, but you haven't really reached out to. People who you may have one of those weak ties, or you were close at some point, but you've moved on. How long ago has it been since you reached out to them just to say g'day? We must not mistake networking with requests for asking people to do stuff for us. Networking is about you, and it's about making a connection and a contribution to a relationship. And that takes effort. It takes time and it takes effort. So if you are interested in growing a strong network, it's not going to happen on its own. You have to dedicate time and make some commitment to doing that. And the best place to start is with people you already know. Sometimes they can be family members. They can be people in your group that you know in a certain capacity. For example, I know that some of my best clients are people that I knew socially many years ago. We've all moved on, moved into new roles and careers. We touch base again. They tell me what they're doing and I say what I'm doing, and suddenly we come back together in a whole new relationship. So all those school friends that you've lost contact with, your uni buddies, people from your first job, look them up and just say hello, and you'll be interested. Sometimes networking is all about timing. The right time can put you in contact with someone at the right place. Yes, networking can contribute to you elevating your personal brand. And if that is your objective, absolutely. There's some important points around elevating your personal brand that I think are worth talking about. One is, I mentioned that, you want to be the person that others know, like, and trust. The only way they can do that is if they know the real you. So if you go into a networking context thinking I have to be positive and upbeat and everything's amazing, even though it's not, you're really not going to get the best out of a situation. In my network, in Women's Network Australia, I say often when we get together, at least one person cries, not because they're having a bad time, but we create an atmosphere which is really welcoming and safe for them to be vulnerable. And the realities of working in business, particularly in small business, is it's really tough. And so what you want often in a relationship or in a networking environment is to actually be your true self. And sometimes that means letting your guard down and being vulnerable with a room full of strangers. And out of that, fantastic things can happen. People connect, they'll collaborate with you, they'll help you and assist you. So really think about the type of person you're bringing into the room. I did also mention the way you conduct yourself in any relationship, and obviously for networking, think about the long game. The person you meet today, you may never see again, or you could see them in 10 years' time and they might be your boss. So just think about how that relationship today is actually going to play out. Obviously, you're all great communicators. You're active on social media. You know how to use your social media networks to stay in touch. But think about perhaps the content and the way you're sharing if you're wanting to build your personal brand. Saying yes to opportunities is obviously a great way to do that. But sometimes I think it's fair to say we can feel pretty overwhelmed with what we've got on our plate. So think about whether saying yes is actually part of your mission. Does this achieve the outcome that you're hoping to? And it's okay to say no, or thanks for the offer, but I'm overcommitted this month. I'd love to talk again when I've got a bit more capacity. That's a legitimate line. You don't blow people off. You just manage their expectations and your own. And speaking of expectations, don't go into a networking opportunity thinking you're going to meet 10 people, sign up new clients, get a new job, whatever it might be. Go in there thinking about how will I reward myself How will I use whatever interaction comes out of this as a learning opportunity? Often the rewards come later rather than straight away. So yes, absolutely have some objectives, but be very careful about overcooking the goose. I want to share this fabulous illustration with you before I wrap up, because I know we want to have some time for questions. And you may not be able to see all of this, but it's a really great illustration of how to work a room, and where to stand and some of the things you can do. And this is the story of Diane. Diane's heading into, as you can see, a pretty large networking group with quite a lot of blokes in suits. And that still today does tend to sum up a lot of the certainly formal conferences and big networking opportunities that I think we're all exposed to. But she doesn't go in cold. She does her prep. She knows generally who's in the room. She looks for the guest speakers. She knows who else is there, at least by not necessarily personally, but she's probably done a bit of Dr. Googling before she's gone in. She thinks about what she's going to wear, comfortable, hopefully with some pockets, not too big a bag, because you don't want to be burdened by what you're carrying. So that at least when you come in the door, you know at least one other person who's likely to be in the room. And that's, I guess, a safety net for all of us. So you can come in with confidence. In this case, Diane suggests this is obviously a breakfast networking. Start at the breakfast table, not because you're hungry, but it's a great way to get some small talk happening. And at least, meet one person over coffee. Coffee's a great leveler for us all. And even if you don't drink coffee, head for the breakfast bar anyway. She then scouts the room, has looked for some people that she recognises. I want to draw your attention to the back of the room where she scouts the lone wolf. Now, inevitably, it could be you, but there's bound to be someone else at the function who's there on their own. Do them a favour and do yourself a favour. Go and speak to that person, because there's nothing more uncomfortable than being a person on your own and feeling like you don't fit in. Much harder to break into a group of 5 or 6 or even 3 people. Much easier to go and speak with one person, and then you two can work together to join a bigger group, or you can move on and circulate around the room. This point about being curious, I hope I've stressed that enough. Asking questions rather than hitting people with an elevator pitch. When you introduce yourself, I recommend that you say where you're from and what you do before your name, because often our brain takes a little while to catch up with the conversation. And if you say your name first, I'm Cheryl Gray. I'm the CEO of Women's Network Australia. We help women in business to connect and succeed. What's your name again? Because I've just got all that information up front too quickly. And the most important part, my name, I've already forgotten. So rather put your name at the end of that introduction, and people are more likely to remember it. Also ask others that you know, if you happen to know someone at the function, to introduce you to someone else. It could be someone they're talking to, or someone that they know in the crowd that can give you an introduction. Don't sort of just go in. I don't know about you, but I've certainly had a number of experiences where people come at me from 10 paces with their business cards out in front, and literally like a snowplow just coming at you with their business card. Please don't ever do that. It's really confronting, and it's also not effective in terms of making contact. Absolutely, if there's an opportunity to exchange a business card, but it should be part of the natural progression of a conversation. And then obviously remembering, as you would, making sure that you follow up with people who you've met or contacts that you've made at those functions. There's a few other things we can go through. But Mel, I think maybe it might be a good time to open up to questions if people have them.
Sounds good. While you're thinking of your questions, if you haven't got any already, I'll get started. I've got a couple of my own. One is, and I hear this every now and then, do you have to be an extrovert to be a good networker?
Absolutely not. In fact, I actually think some of the best networkers are introverts, because often, and I don't know the group and which side is extrovert and which side is introvert. Or don't forget, you can actually be both. You can be extroverted introvert.
Yes, yeah.
Vice versa. But no, if you go into networking about what can I get out of it, that sense of curiosity, asking questions is something that introverts do really well. In fact, they often are able to skip the small talk and just ask some really meaningful questions. And that's often a much more successful way to connect and network than it's all about me, it's all about me, it's all about me. Look at my arms, I'm the center of attention. So yeah, look, it's not about being an extrovert or an introvert. It's just thinking about what do I want to get out of this situation? What can I learn? How can I contribute? How can I be curious? And how can I help someone else in the room?
I love that. And I guess that almost brings me to my next question, is when you do have someone flailing around and sucking the oxygen out of your space, how do you get out of that? How can you get out of a conversation that's almost going nowhere, or you feel like you're being talked over even?
Yeah. So there's a couple of ways that there's a couple. One is a body language technique, and then obviously there's a few sort of departing phrases, I guess we'd call them. When you're face to face with someone and they really are like taking up a lot of the oxygen, you can really subtly just pivot on one foot, so that you actually turn your body. So rather than being face on, you actually just pivot slightly on an angle, and it almost creates an escape route for you. It certainly firstly almost frees you from the chain of that interaction, but it also gives you the opportunity to just look over your shoulder as to who else is in the room. Whereas when you're one-on-one with someone and they're very much in your face, it's very hard to just go, I have to go. But if you can at first just build in that little body language pivot to create a bit of space for yourself. Oh, look, there's Mary over there. I'm really sorry, I haven't seen Mary for ages. I'll catch up with you. I'm just going to go and have a chat to Mary before she leaves. So you create an escape route from that conversation. That does create a physical shift in the conversation. Sometimes people, particularly when they're taller than you can feel like they're really leaning over and leaning into the conversation. So again, that's a good way for you to not try to exert power over the top of them, but actually remove yourself from the conversation. And phrases like, oh, look, I've just seen someone who I've been meaning to catch up with. It's been really great talking to you, but I'm just going to go and have a chat over here. Absolutely okay with that. And I know that sometimes you might be in a situation where you think, this is just not my crowd. This is just not me. I'm in the wrong place at the wrong time. There's nothing wrong with leaving. It really is. There's nothing wrong with leaving. It's okay, because you're giving up your time and your energy to be in this place. If you're not getting anything out of it other than a negative feeling, it's okay to go. It's actually okay. You don't need to feel guilty about it. But you should never really be in that position if you've done some of that preparation that we talked about. If you thought ahead about what you were going to get out of the situation, if you did some research to understand who else is in the room, if you brought someone with you to support you, if you knew that there was someone there that you could meet up with, you should never really be in a situation where you don't want to be in that room.
Yeah, those are really good tips. Thank you. One of the tips I heard that I really like to sort of end a conversation is what they call the white flag question. So something along the lines of, oh, I've got to go and meet some other people, but before I go, can you tell me blah? So it's not a,
Yeah.
this is the end. I'm still interested in you, but I've signaled that I will be leaving after we talk about this. So I really liked that one.
And
actually.
Mel, what you said about being interested in the other person is the key to it all. You know, it's not about you getting them interested in you. It's about you discovering the interesting thing about them. And if we all did that, then networking would be so much easier, because we wouldn't have to have a polished spiel. We'd have someone who draws that out of us. So as communicators, we're in a terrific position to be able to do that.
I was going to say that's right on par with everything, a central tenet of everything we teach with communication, right? It's about your audience. It's not about you.
Correct.
So
Correct.
that's, yeah, really nice. What are some of the great questions that you've come across in your networking activity? So what are some really good questions to ask people?
Yeah, look, I personally prefer really authentic questions, like just some questions, like say it's a professional group like this. You know, what's the most challenging thing you've succeeded in this week? It's a great way for them to then be able to talk about the type of work that they do, rather than what do you do, you know, who do you work for? They're a bit sort of bland. You know, what are the successes that you've had at work this week? What have some of the challenges been? And then the lead-up question, the follow-up question is, well, how did you go about, you know, I'm really interested to hear how you dealt with that. So those sorts of, you know, depending on obviously the type of networking group that you're in, or the scenario, things that are relevant to the relationship, but are just a bit more, I guess, insightful than just, you know, who are you? What do you do?
They're great questions. Thank you. I'll open up to the floor. So if you'd like to come off mute and ask a question or pop something in the chat, you're more than welcome.
I'll ask a question if that's okay. So it's Nadine. Just checking, have you got a good example of an interaction that went really well? So something that shows good questioning, how you were curious about something, and then a result that came from it.
Yeah, look, I'll use that example. Thanks, Nadine. That's a great question. I'll use that example that I mentioned about crying. And you know, it really sticks with me. We had a networking breakfast, a small group breakfast, so about 20 people, and most of the attendees knew each other, but there was a couple who were completely new to the group. One was a professional business coach, so really great communicator, helps people with their business problems, but was clearly going through a rough patch personally. So we were talking around the table, and you know, someone just said, you know, like, how do you deal with some of the interactions between your personal life and coaching life in terms of the balance that you can achieve? And she cried. She literally broke down and cried. And she said she was so embarrassed at first. And of course, the response was, don't be embarrassed. You know, it's all good. You know, we can help you. And out of that, I guess that fairly gentle question around, you know, how do you balance your professional, what you do professionally with your own personal life, it revealed that she was struggling with that. Now, in that group, there was another probably more experienced life coach in the room who was able to say, listen, I can see that you're, you know, struggling with some things. Can I have a chat to you afterwards, and perhaps we can work through some of these things together? And they actually then spent time, quite a lot of time after the function, just had an extra cup of coffee and a good long chat. And that person went away feeling an awful lot better and more empowered about their situation. That wouldn't have happened if, firstly, that I guess curious probing question hadn't happened, and that there was an environment that was supportive for that person to be able to share how they really felt, and then be able to step in and assist them. So, you know, I guess it's sort of stayed with me, because you often we think of networking as about doing deals, but networking isn't about doing deals. It's about building relationships. And often those relationships can be formed out of really negative feelings or challenges, and great things can come out of that. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Jade's written in the chat, vulnerability is a great connector. Absolutely,
Jade. It absolutely is a terrific, and in fact, probably some of the strongest connections we make as individuals are formed in crisis, because you create a common bond with those around you at that point in time, because you're going through that same experience, and you'll always have that experience as a shared experience. So absolutely a great, you know, that doesn't mean we walk into every networking scenario and go, my life is shit. You know? Like, it's the pits, please help me. You know, it's got to be horses for courses, but it is about being confident enough to carry yourself and be able to share the real you, because ultimately that's who we want to know. We don't want to know the person who's doing everything right and has the fantastic outcomes. Like, if you're that good, what the hell are you doing here with the rest of us? We want to know the real you. And so that's the person that we want to get to know and understand. So if we can be comfortable and confident and trusting that we can share that in an environment, and I appreciate that we don't always feel that way, so we hold back. But that's where the gold is, for sure.
Cheryl, you talked earlier when Elizabeth asked that really good question, that you mentioned, you know, the speed networking things are just chaos.
Yeah.
What's a couple of really good formats for networking events that you've seen or experienced or set up?
I actually find there's a bit of a tipping point in terms of numbers. I find the most successful networking events are almost like as if you invited a group to dinner. So a boardroom table style, 15 to 20 people, where you all have clear line of sight and can hear each other around the table, is a really great format for networking. And you need a host. Someone has to be the host. And it's their job to be that curious, you know, questioner and draw out the connections between people around the table. And that's not just, you know, 15 people turn up and I ask some questions. You know, when we get 15 to 20 people in a room, I know exactly who they are. We seat them in a particular order, because I know that they'll have certain things in common, or they might work in a similar industry. They might be similar personality types. So already there's a bit of, you know, let's use the old smoke and mirrors to create an environment that is conducive to fast, effective collaboration. And then you look at the types of questions that you might want to pose. I often use myself as a bit of a Trojan horse. Hey, I'm struggling with this. Has anyone else also struggling with this at the moment? Can you help me? I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Now, I may not be struggling with it, but it might be something that I want to throw out there as a question. But that's me being vulnerable. That's me sharing something about myself. Often it is true, or I make a joke of myself, as that's my personality type. But so what happens is, out of that 20 people, is you walk away knowing 19 people really well. Now, if you go to a half-day workshop with 250 people, tell me how many people you actually get to know. If it's more than 2, you're amazing, because you usually only get to know the 2 people sitting either side of you, because everything else is, up there on stage, it's all happening around you. So you really don't get to know anybody, even though there's, 10 times as many people in the room. So personally, I find it is about quality over quantity. But that, if you want to build a network in terms of numbers, that's a more time-consuming way to do it.
Yeah, that's really great advice. Thank you. Do we have any other questions from the room? And while we're waiting for any other questions, in the spirit of networking, you may want to pop your LinkedIn profile into the chat so that we can all get connected, at least online, if not in person today. One more question for you, Cheryl, while waiting for everybody to pop their links in or their last questions. Junior comms pros, often may feel that they don't have as much to contribute to a conversation at a networking event. What would you say to them?
A, you're wrong. And B, how do we use social media? No. Look, as a young comms professional, you have so much value to add, because you think differently, you ask different questions, and you have different skills. So never underestimate your length of time or experience with your skills and knowledge. They're 2 completely different things. One can certainly develop over time, but let me put it the other way around. As someone who's experienced, and I think they use the term seasoned. It feels like a turkey going in the oven. I'm a seasoned professional. It's incumbent upon us to encourage younger professionals to feel confident. It's incumbent upon us to ask them those questions and get them to discover what it is that's unique and special about them, and the skills and knowledge and expertise that they have. It's actually incumbent upon us to draw that out of a conversation with them. So rather than thinking, I've only been working for 2 or 3 years, what have I got to contribute? It's actually about those of us who have more experience. How can I interact with a young professional and get them to understand their true value in this room?
No, it's a really good point. And again, another reason why to join a professional organisation too, as a young professional, to build those relationships with, as you say, the seasoned of us. I do feel like a turkey now. Nadine's also put another question in the chat. Following on from your large conference example, how can you tackle a large event from a networking perspective?
Yeah, good. It is a good question. I think you've got to think about your objectives slightly differently, in that you're not going to be necessarily going in there to establish, a large number of really strong connections, but you're more likely to be using it as an opportunity to increase your, lift your personal branding and awareness somewhat, or create some level of contact that you can then follow up. So that's the classic example of, you go there, there's a table of, say you're sitting at a table of 10, first thing, get up and introduce yourself to everyone at your table. Like before the speaker starts or whatever, physically stand up. Don't go, oh, hi, I'm such and such, can't reach you across the table. Yeah, that's no good. Physically stand up, take yourself around, introduce yourself to each person. You may not get a chance to speak to them again, but you've got their names and you probably have done a quick exchange of business cards at that point. Jump onto LinkedIn the following day. Hey, let's have a coffee. If it's someone who either you automatically, you get that little vibe that this is someone that I'm interested in, or they're in an area that that you're interested in pursuing. use your other networking vehicles like LinkedIn, like emails, like then, one-on-one follow-ups to deepen that connection, because it's really, really hard to do it, in a large structured room like that.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you, Cheryl. What I'd really love now is if everybody could either just come off mute very quickly or pop in the chat. What's one of your light bulb moments from this morning's session with Cheryl? So what's something that stood out for you as a bit of a aha moment? And while you're thinking about that, we'd love to get your feedback on this morning's session as well. And I will be sending an email later with a copy of the recordings, and Cheryl has very graciously offered to share her slides as well. So if you want to go back to, especially to that diagram, which was awesome. But let's go with some light bulb moments. Diane's written, be curious and make meaningful connections. It's about the other person, not you. Nadine?
Yeah, I like the idea of the long game, and that you can be yourself and that you're slowly building a network. And I really also loved the diagram. I think that I need to digest that and go through that a little bit more, of how you approach a room, and because it can seem so intimidating when you go into a big space and if you don't know anyone or can't see
it's a great diagram for how to giving you some strategy. There's a few sort of heat map spots in a big room about where to stand, like standing near the food is a great place to meet maximum number of people, because they're all going to come up and grab some food. But there's some little points in that diagram that are really useful. But as I say, what we do en masse in a big group can achieve a certain amount. What the strength of what happens in that diagram is once you leave the room, and how you do the follow-up. And as you would know, that's really where the connections come from.
Jade, you were going to share your light bulb moment?
Yeah, I think for me, being neurodivergent, a lot of neurodivergent people find small talk really difficult. So it was quite nice just to hear, I guess, permission that it's okay to be vulnerable, because I sort of go into things with more wanting to make more meaningful connections.
Yeah. Jade, I would say keep doing what you're doing. Absolutely keep doing what you're doing, because small talk is not required in a lot of these, in a lot of networking situations. In fact, most people find it a bit tedious. My title was from tedious to terrific. If we can move past the small talk, but still come across as interested in the other person. There's a difference between jumping through past small talk and telling you about me, as opposed to jumping past small talk and asking me about me. So I'd say absolutely do what you're doing.
We've got some other great light bulb moments in the chat. Be curious and make meaningful connections. It's about the other person, not you. And again, networking is about curiosity, asking questions. Head, heart, and hand. I really loved that as well. It's a nice and easy one to remember as well. Dilka's good point. Anyone you meet could be your boss or colleague in the future. Just treat people well. Yeah, I think just be a good human anyway would be nice. Helen wrote, love the overall message about fostering meaningful connections and not focusing on networking, which is great. Sarah's written, thinking about what you might ask rather than what you might say. The inner and outer circles. And Helen's written, I'm unable to put my camera on, but as an introvert who can be an extrovert, I found Cheryl's advice to be just very authentic and very helpful. So thank you.
Thank you, Helen. That's very nice of you to say.
Well, on those excellent light bulb notes, we'll draw this morning's event to a close. Thank you so much for joining in. Hopefully you've all popped your LinkedIn profiles in the chat so we can at least get connected online. I've also put Cheryl's LinkedIn in there as well.
Oh, thank you. I was going to say I haven't had a chance to do that. Good on you.
10 steps ahead. And have put a link to the feedback survey in there as well. We do have our next event will be an in-person one, so a good opportunity to practice some of these skills we've learned today. The 9th of May, I believe. Is that right, Dilka? Yes.
Yes.
And that's all about ESG and comms. So we've got some really good speakers starting to get lined up for that one. So more information coming on that soon. And we're also planning a cool one with virtual reality. So that'll be coming your way shortly too. Dilka, anything you want to add?
Not really. Look, I'm sorry. I'm very unwell and I sound like I'm speaking from the bottom of a bathtub. So I've been trying to stay quiet this morning. But yeah, please keep your eye on our LinkedIn profile. Sorry, that's my phone. Yeah, please keep your eye on our profile and on our feeds and yeah, join us again. It's and thank you, Cheryl. Absolutely tremendous, as I expected and knew you would be.
Well, I'm just so pleased to see IABC Queensland going from strength to strength. It's a fabulous group. It's always been a fabulous group, and so I'm really great to see you doing so well.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everybody. Have a marvelous day, and we'll talk to you soon.
Bye now.